say something whether y'all ready or not. For those of you who ain't got Bibles and got them open, I want y'all to get with somebody who's got one and has it open. Got that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And where we're at today, we're still in Genesis. Vayagash is the title of the Torah portion. I hope I've said that correct.
Sounds about right.
Y'all will have to consult Vanna about that. She knows how to pronounce all this stuff.
Not really, but I try.
But the Torah portion's really good. It really is good. Are you wanting to read it? Are you gonna be reading it?
Unless you want to.
Well, I'll start it out.
Okay. I'll pick up.
I'll
You
fit,
stop and I'll
you can
start.
pick up at 45.
All
Okay.
right. That sounds good.
I do it all the time. It's not a problem. She walked into that, you know.
Yeah.
But so, if you will, Genesis chapter 44, starting with verse 18. Then Judah approached him and said, "If you please, my lord, may your servant speak a word in my lord's ears, and let not your anger flare up at your servant, for you are like Pharaoh." Now, mind you, Judah is talking to his brother that he doesn't know is his brother, in Egypt. He's talking to Jacob. Joseph. Jacob's his street name. My Lord has asked his servant, saying, "Have you a father or brother?" And we said to my Lord, "We have an old father and a young child of his old age. His brother is dead, and he alone is left from his mother, and his father loves him." Then you said to your servants, "Bring him down to me, and I will set my eye on him." We said to my Lord, "The youth cannot leave his father, for should he leave his father, he will die." But you said to your servant, "If your youngest brother does not come down with you, you will not see our faces again." And it was when we went up to your servant, my father, we told him my Lord's word, and our father said, "Go back and buy us some food." We said, "We cannot go down, only if our youngest brother is with us, then we will go down. And we cannot see the man's face if our youngest brother is not with us." Then your servant, my father, said to us, "You know that my wife bore me two sons. One has left me, and I presume, alas, he has surely been torn to pieces, for I have not seen him since. So should you take this one too from my presence, and disaster befall him, then you will have brought down my horridness and evil to the grave. And now if I come to your servant, my father, and the youth is not with us, since his soul is so bound up with his soul, it will happen that when he sees the youth is missing, he will die, and your servants will have brought down the horridness of your servant our father in sorrow to the grave. For your servant took responsibility for your servant took responsibility for the youth from my father, saying, If I do not bring him back to you, then I will have sinned to my father for all time. Now therefore please let your servant remain instead of the youth, as a servant for my Lord, and let the youth go up with his brothers. For how can I go up to my father if the youth is not with me, lest I see the evil that will befall my father?" So,
And Joseph was unable to restrain himself before all those who stood by him, and he called out, "Have everyone go out from me." So no one stood with him while Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept aloud, and the Mitzrites and the house of Pharaoh heard it. And Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" But his brothers were unable to answer him, for they trembled before him. And Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come near to me." And when they came near, he said, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold to Mitzrayim. And now do not be grieved nor displeased with yourselves, because you have sold me here. For Elohim sent me before you to preserve life. For 2 years now the scarcity of food has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there is neither plowing nor harvesting. And Elohim sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant in the earth, and give life to you by a great escape. So then, you did not send me here, but Elohim. And he has set for me a father to Pharaoh, and master of all his house, and a ruler throughout the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, Thus says your son Joseph, Elohim has made me master of all of Mitzrayim. Come down to me, do not delay. And you shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and be near to me, you and your children, and your children's children, your flocks and your herds, and all that you have. And I shall provide for you there, lest you and your household and all that you have come to poverty, because 5 years of scarcity of food are still to come. And look, your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin, see that it is my mouth that speaks to you. And you shall inform my father of all of my esteem in Mitzrayim, and of all that you have seen. And you shall hurry and bring my father down here. And he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept. And Benjamin wept on his neck. And he kissed all of his brothers and wept over them. And after that his brothers spoke with him. And the report of it was heard by the house of Pharaoh, saying, The brothers of Joseph have come. And it was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of his servants. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, Say to your brothers, Do this, load your beasts and go, enter the land of Canaan, and take your father and your households and come to me. And I give you the best of the land of Mitzrayim, and you eat the fat of the land. And you have been commanded to do this. Take wagons out of the land of Mitzrayim for your little ones and your wives, and you shall bring your father and come. And do not be concerned about your goods, for the best of all the land of Mitzrayim is yours. And the sons of Israel did so. And Joseph gave them wagons according to the mouth of Pharaoh, and he gave them food for the journey. He gave to all of them, to each man, changes of garments, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of garments. And he sent to his father this, 10 donkeys loaded with the best of Mitzrayim, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain and bread and food for his father for the journey. So he sent his brothers away, and they left. And he said to them, Do not quarrel along the way. And they went up out of Mitzrayim and came to the land of Canaan, to Jacob their father. And they told him, saying, Joseph is still alive, and he is the governor over all of the land of Mitzrayim. And Jacob's heart ceased, for he did not believe them. But when they spoke to him all the words which Joseph had spoken to them, and when he saw the wagons which Joseph had sent to transport him, the spirit of Jacob their father revived. And Israel said, Enough, my son Joseph is still alive. Let me go and see him before I die.
I'll read. So Israel set out with all that he had, and he came to Beersheba, where he slaughtered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. He spoke to Israel in night visions, and he said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here I am. And he said, I am the God of your father. Have no fear of descending to Egypt, for I shall establish you as a great nation there. I shall descend with you to Egypt, and I shall also surely bring you up, and Joseph shall place his hand on your eyes. So Jacob arose from Beersheba. The sons of Israel transported Jacob, their father, as well as their young children and wives, in the wagons which Pharaoh had sent to transport them. They took their livestock and their wealth that they had amassed in the land of Canaan, and they came to Egypt. Jacob and all his offspring with him, his sons and grandsons with him, his daughters and granddaughters, and all his offspring he brought with him to Egypt. Now these are the names of the children of Israel who were coming to Egypt: Jacob and his children, and Jacob's firstborn Reuben. You can take this from here if you want.
Certainly. And the sons of Reuben, Hanok and Pelu and Hetzron and Carmi. And the sons of Shimon, Yemuel, Yamin, Ohad, Yakin, and Zoar, and Shaul, son of the Canaanite woman. And the sons of Levi, Gershon, Kehath, Merari. And the sons of Yehuda, Er, and Onan, and Shelah, and Peretz, and Zerah. But Er and Onan died in the land of Canaan. And the sons of Peretz were Hetzron and Hamul. And the sons of Yissachar, Tola, and Puah, and Yob, and Shimron. And the sons of Zebulun, Sered, and Elon, and Yalel. And these were the sons of Leah, whom she bore to Jacob in Padan Aram with his daughter Dinah. And all the beings, his sons and his daughters, were 33. And the sons of Gad were Sephion and Haggai, Shuni, Etzbon, Eri, and Arod, and Areli. And the sons of Asher, Yimnah, and Yishwa, and Yishwi, and Beriah, and Sarah, their sister. And the sons of Beriah, Heber, and Malkiel. And these were the sons of Zilpah, whom Laban gave to Leah his daughter, and these she bore to Jacob, 16 beings. And the sons of Rachel, Jacob's wife, Joseph and Benjamin. And to Joseph in the land of Mitzrayim were born Manasseh and Ephraim, whom Aseneth, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore to him. And the sons of Benjamin, Bela and Becher, and Ashbel, Gera, and Naaman, Hai and Rosh, Mupin, Hupim, and Ard. These are their sons of Rachel, who were born to Jacob, 14 beings in all. And the son of Dan, Hushim. And the sons of Naphtali, Yatzael, and Guni, and Yatzer, and Shalem. And these were the sons of Bilhah, whom Laban gave to Rachel his daughter, and she bore these to Jacob, 7 beings in all. All the beings who went with Jacob to Mitzrayim, who came from his body, besides Jacob's sons' wives, were 66 beings in all. And the sons of Joseph, who were born to him in Mitzrayim, were 2 beings. All the beings of the house of Jacob, who went to Mitzrayim, were 70. And he sent Yehudah before him to Joseph, to point out before him the way of Goshen. And they came to the land of Goshen. And Joseph made ready his chariot and went up to Goshen to meet his father Israel. And he appeared to him, and fell on his neck, and wept on his neck a long time. And Israel said to Joseph, "Now let me die, since I have seen your face, that you are still alive." And Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, "I'm going up to inform Pharaoh, and say to him, my brothers and those of my father's house who were in the land of Canaan have come to me. And the men are shepherds, that they have been men of livestock, and they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. And it shall be, when Pharaoh calls you and says, 'What is your occupation?' that you shall say, 'Your servants have been men of livestock from our youth even till now, both we and also our fathers, so that you dwell in the land of Goshen, for every shepherd is an abomination to the Mitzrites.'" You want me to keep going? Dean?
No, I get it.
Okay.
Thank you.
And you'll go to 27.
Then Joseph came and told Pharaoh, and he said, "My father and my brothers, their flocks, their cattle, and everything they own, have arrived from the land of Canaan, and they are now in the region of Goshen." From the least of his brothers he took 5 men and presented him to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to his brothers, "What is your occupation?" They answered Pharaoh, "Your servants are shepherds as well as our forefathers." And they said to Pharaoh, "We have come to sojourn in the land, since there is no grazing for your servants' flocks, for the famine is severe in the land of Canaan now. If you please, allow your servants to dwell in the region of Goshen." And Pharaoh said to Joseph, saying, "Your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you, in the best part of the land. Settle your father and your brothers. Let them settle in the region of Goshen, and if you know that there are capable men among them, appoint them as chamberlains over livestock that belongs to me." Then Joseph brought Jacob his father and presented him to Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Jacob, "How many are the days and the years of your life?" Jacob answered Pharaoh, "The days of the years of my sojourns have been 130 years. Few and bad have been the days of the years of my life, and they have not reached the lifespans of my forefathers in the days of their sojourns." Then Jacob blessed Pharaoh and left Pharaoh's presence. So Joseph settled his father and his brothers, and he gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the best part of the land, in the region of Ramesses, as Pharaoh had commanded. Joseph sustained his father and his brothers and all of his father's household with food according to the children. Now there was no bread in all the earth, for the famine was very severe. The land of Egypt and the land of Canaan became weary from hunger. Joseph gathered all the money that was to be found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan through the provisions that they were purchasing, and Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's palace. And when the money was exhausted from the land of Egypt and from the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph, saying, Give us bread. Why should we die in your presence? For the money is gone. And Joseph said, Bring your livestock, and I will provide for you in return for your livestock if the money is gone. So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in return for the horses and for the flocks of sheep, for the herds of cattle, for the donkeys. Thus he provided them with bread in exchange for all their livestock during that year. And when that year had ended, and they came to him the next year and said to him, We will not withhold from you, my lord, with the money and the flocks of cattle have been exhausted to my lord. Nothing is left before my lord but our bodies and our land. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Acquire us and our land for bread, and we with our land will become serfs to Pharaoh, and provide seed so that we may live and not die, and the land will not become desolate. Thus Joseph acquired all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for every Egyptian soul his field because the famine had. Let me try that again. Thus Joseph acquired all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for every Egyptian sold his field because the famine had overwhelmed them, and the land became Pharaoh's. As for the nation, he resettled it by cities, from one end of Egypt's borders to the other. Only the land of the priests he did not buy, since the priests had a stipend from Pharaoh, and they lived off their stipend that Pharaoh had given them. Therefore, they did not sell their land. Joseph said to the people, Look, I have acquired you this day with your land for Pharaoh. Here is seed for you. Sow the land. At the ingathering of the harvest, you will give a fifth to Pharaoh. The other 4 parts shall be yours. The harvest you will give a fifth to Pharaoh, and the other 4 parts be yours as seed for the field. And food for yourselves and for those in the household, and to feed your young ones. And they said, You have saved our lives. May we find favor in your eyes, my Lord, and we will be serfs to Pharaoh. All righty. I got some notes here, backing all the way up to chapter 44. Is it really? So Joseph imposed it as a statute till this day regarding the land of Egypt. It was Pharaoh's for the fifth. Only the priest's land alone did not become Pharaoh's. Thus Israel settled in the land of Egypt in the region of Goshen. They acquired property in it, and they were fruitfully and multiplied greatly. I did it. Okay. Back to 44, chapter 44, where it started, this whole portion started. I am backing up to verse 18. I've got some notes here. And one of them says, of course, this is where Judah is talking to Joseph. And this is a note on 18 through 34. Benjamin had been caught with the viceroy's goblet, and the all-powerful Egyptian ruled that Benjamin would have to remain in Egypt as a slave. Only Judah risked his life to intercede. Simple yet eloquent, controlled yet emotional, respectful yet firm, Judah offered himself as a slave, not realizing that he was speaking to the very person whom he had once sold into slavery. Let me see. They kind of backed up about the goblet deal there. 44:24. Let me see. Okay. Go ahead, Erica, with your hand.
With my hand?
Yep. And the
Okay.
rest of you.
Yeah, I'm stuck in the book. Okay, so I had a question last week with the portion. I just want to hurry up and get this out of here. Out there, excuse me. So, real quick, the servant of Pharaoh never said that the brothers were innocent. And part of their deal was that, just like with Rachel, the death would not, death would come to her. So it was disavowed this last time, as they had said the same thing that Rachel had said. Excuse me. So, is it possible that because they were not obviously innocent, and not just with the cup situation, because obviously Benjamin had no idea, but is it possible that the other half of that as being servants could have potentially been the reason why they were enslaved for all of those years as being servants? I guess you could say forced servants, because of this vow, just as Rachel had died for what she had done, that the children of, mhm, yeah, yeah, sorry. Yeah, so that they would ended up, they would have ended up being slaves for all of those generations. But the brothers, because of what they did to
Need mics. That's right. That's my mic finger. When I point to somebody, whatever you're doing, you need a mic in your hand while you're doing it. I don't care if you're plowing the field. Thus saith thee. Oh, oh, is that mic? We got the mic on? There you go. I'm trying to find something that I'm struggling with.
Not you, Dane.
Yes, I am. Okay, okay.
I said it was hot and ready. Pizza, pizza. Yeah.
Okay. The notes in here, starting about chapter 45, when he revealed himself and all the weeping. The notes in here says it is indicative of Joseph's rank and the high esteem in which he held, that his weeping caused such universal concern, meaning all the people in the palace around him and all. They all took ear to that. Why? That's Joseph, and why is he weeping? It caused them to wonder what was going on here. You know. When Joseph said, I am Joseph, God's master plan became clear to the brothers. Everything that had happened for the last 22 years fell into perspective. So too will it be in the time to come when God will reveal himself and announce, I am Hashem. That's interesting that they say that like that, because they weren't certain. First of all, they were like dumbfounded when he first revealed himself to her, like, huh? They had that like, huh, look on their face, And then he kind of I'm sure he had to say it to him again. I'm your brother, And so, and they still didn't take ease with it, because we see later on in the chapters that they speak among themselves, saying after they come there that with their father that when the father dies, then he's going to exact his wrath on us. They kind of had, some of them still had that feeling like, this ain't water under the bridge yet. But he was sincere in what he was trying to tell them. Don't worry about that. It was God's will. He kept reflecting that. That's where I'm kind of in disagreement here with him saying it is indicative of Joseph's rank and high. Well, no. When Joseph said, I am Joseph, God's master plan became clear to the brothers. No, not right off the rip. It didn't come clear to them. So I'm having a little conflict with that here in myself. Anybody got anything comment?
Okay. On the Rachel something, I have a special insight, but I think we moved past that parsha. So instead of talking about history and such, looking at, Hosea, and right before it's a prophecy that people use with the topic of the resurrection, it says, for the children of Israel shall abide without teraphim and etc. for many days. Afterwards, the children of Israel shall fear the Lord their God and David their king, and so on and so on. So good things. It looks as though teraphim is actually significant in the future restoration of Israel. And I'll just leave that alone for a moment. But in this matter of Joseph demonstrating that something of the metaphysical, the spirit of prophecy, revelation, was with him, he had a status that nobody was going to gainsay him. When it was Joseph, their little brother, having a prophetic dream, you're not allowed to have that prophetic dream. It's not okay, you know. And it's interesting how in the flesh people sometimes, I think the phrase is, he that was born of the flesh persecutes him that is born of the spirit. But, you know, how people try to use human greatness in a sort of one-upsmanship. And sometimes they don't realize that they're interfering with the work of God, which is what Joseph's brothers seemingly had done. But as Joseph said, God's plan succeeded in the end, and his prophecies came true. But I think it's interesting how he kind of foreshadows and prepares them to receive that a dream had come true, in that of all the thousands of people who'd been in Egypt that week for grain, his steward pursued one group, and he says, "Here's my divination cup. Even without it, I could tell it was Yah." All right.
But that's well put there. You know, the brothers feeling like that they had done something, you know, so terrible, which it was at the time. But like Joseph had told him, though, you know, y'all had only done work that was to bring the Father's will to fruition, that I would come to a point to where I could save the whole family as well as the land. You know, that all these people, y'all and his family as well, and all the people around, would survive the famine. Yes, Kenny?
Yes. That would be me.
See, both of us ain't crazy. Both of us ain't crazy, you know. Just one of us.
That's Rabbi Kenny Rogers from now on. Okay, so I guess my thoughts go to, it just seems like Yehovah has spent a lot of time softening these brothers up. I mean, at any other time, when we hear about Lot being taken in the time of Abraham, you know, Abraham's first response is to, you know, get all of his trained servants and go and take him back. You know, and I'm thinking that has to at least cross the minds of the brothers here. Is he takes Benjamin, we're going to war. You know, I mean, they did the same thing over Diana and Shechem. You know, what is stopping them from going to war with Egypt? You know, they think that they've obviously got the power of Yehovah behind them. So I think that the years that especially Judah spent with losing his sons, and, you know, it must have softened them up quite a bit, you know, for them to actually humble themselves to the degree that they did. You know, they even went so far as to say that Joseph or Jacob is a servant of Egypt. You know, which I think that's a little bit insulting, if you ask me. You know, to put the patriarch of the family at a lower position than the Egyptian leader, I guess. I think it's. I think they did a lot of humbling in order to keep themselves from actually going to war. You know, I think this is what this is all about. Is, you know, they're negotiating to avoid a war.
It's interesting you put that like that, because if we look back before the brothers ever threw him into the pit, and then before they sold him off to the caravan, you know, they were like kind of mean, and like they really had a chip on each shoulder. You know, it's no doubt that that was their attitude in their life at that time. And I like the way you put that, Joel, that, you know, over the time there had to be a softening up, because these people were really stiff-necked. Like, they were stiff past the neck. They were stiff further down. No, they were just, and God had to soften it up. And time did that, I'm sure, in order for them to even listen and to remotely be receptive of what they were experiencing here. Because if they'd have had the same attitude back then, it really could have went bad. It really could have went bad. So no doubt the whole time God was orchestrating it all anyway to begin with, you know. And I'm sure that when they got a hold of that fact, that he just, Yahweh, the God of our forefathers and all, he used us at that time. And when that, I'm sure that helped to heal them as well as it had done Joseph. You know, because you can't tell me Joseph didn't struggle with that son. You can't do it because that's human. That is just human. And the only thing that helped him to endure is because of how strong his faith was and how he believed that. And the things in his life at the time that took place helped to reinforce his faith. The fact that everywhere he went, everything he touched turned to gold, so to speak. You know, he went to Potiphar's house, sold into that, and Potiphar gave free reign after he figured out this guy, his God, has favor with his God. And that was wise on Potiphar's part. You know, I don't need to bother him, you know. But something that I found interesting, I don't know if this is a good time to mention it. Hold on a second. When we get to the genealogy here, if anybody's got anything going up to that, I have an interesting thought. I wonder when we get to the genealogy. But it's no doubt, and this is something we should all be cautious with people around us who say they have a dream of this and a dream of that. And all the more, I think we have the wisdom to recognize who certain individuals are. If they say they had a dream of this, a dream of that, hey, there's something going on here. And to pay close attention. Hey, have you dreamed about that anymore? Well, tell me, what have you dreamed to add to what you've shared with us earlier? It's well worth knowing, but not to be shunned or to be made a mockery of. Got to be careful with that because some of us think we're smart. You know, Julie reminds me every day that I'm the smartest person in the house, and I need that. I try to be humble, but it's red. I want to lick it. It looks like a big sucker. But hey, Joseph said when he was a kid, y'all going to bow down to me. He didn't have nowhere near the details of what would lead up to all of that. You know, but something was strong in him. I mean, to me, he didn't boast it at the time in his life or anything. I'm sure their demeanor and him being the youngest one of them all, you know, kind of held him in check. You watch how much you talk about that. Right, yeah. But anybody got anything? I would ask Lori because she can't take a mic with her where she's at. Anybody? Chris? You got something to add? I'm doing really that good? I'm doing that good? Quit it now. Here we go. Y'all, this is worth listening to instead of me.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just had some thoughts here. Can you hear me? No. Okay. Talking about walking in the flesh, that in the beginning of the story, you know, we see that they're kind of all kind of walking in the flesh there. You know, they're throwing Joseph under the bus, and, you know, we've got jealousy and all of this going on. And then here we are now in a place where Judah specifically is, you know, defending Benjamin from his position. So we see them going from flesh to spirit, selfishness to selflessness, and it just really paints a beautiful picture of the people that God had chosen, that that we ancestors would come from, and how they even though they were chosen, they walked in the flesh, and that it took so many years for them to go from walking in the flesh to walking in somewhat of what we would view as righteousness. And that same picture is seen today with each one of us. that we are his chosen people, but he chooses us out of our unrighteousness and makes us righteous. And then you spoke about Joseph's faith and how he had an enormous amount of faith. And so it just made me think that is our faith, it's likely in my thought process that our faith can be increased by how we respond to our response and how we respond to different situations. Like for instance, in the situation with Joseph, where he was accused of being prideful because he had these dreams that he was sharing with his siblings and with his parents, and it can be viewed that that maybe he was, putting himself on a pedestal and being arrogant. But what if he was just really, because there are different ideas and thought processes behind all of this, but that he really just wanted to share what he believed was it was exciting to him, what the Father was revealing to him through this dream. And so out of that, where he felt excitement that the Father was doing something in his life, and he wanted to share that with others, and that others would view that as him being prideful. And was he the one that was being prideful, or was it his brothers that were being prideful in their accusations as well? So in his response, we don't really, I guess, know the whole story of how he responded to that or whatnot. But we do see that later on, many years later, he has a huge amount of faith, and so much so that he's able to pour into a foreigner, not a foreigner in the sense that that the Egyptians, the Pharaoh was the foreigner, but where he was a foreigner in another nation, and that he was able to pour into someone else and share who Yah is to another nation and save them.
I like where you went with that. I think he was. He recognized I am the least of despite all the favoritism that his father lavished him with. I'm sure the coat of many colors and all that, But I'm still the youngest son, and I want to be recognized in some way or something, but not in a prideful way. I think, but this is exciting. I had a really cool dream, y'all, and all this. And let me tell it to you. I think the sons were the ones who had the pride problem, and more than half of them, they just weren't happy with life in general at the time. Man, I'm just a sheep herder, and I do this day in and day out, and I don't have a multitude of a family where I have a wife and boys, and I own servants and stuff like that. I am the servant. And it just grated them, and it was an attitude type life that they had. They probably spoke more pessimism about stuff than they did, to promote anything good, So, I'm with you on that and all. But like I said, time will soften a person up. You can't hate and be bitter and all this, that, and the other and kick against the pricks for so long. You just can't do it. You just can't do it and all. Yes, Ted. Go ahead, Ted.
So I'm referring back to Ray Gardner's notes here because this really, in my mind, brings us to the key message from this parashah. Joseph had hid his face from his brothers for years. They did not know that he was their brother Joseph. Joseph hid his face to find out if his brothers hated Benjamin as they had hated him. He put them in a difficult spot to see if they really were willing to give up their lives for Joseph's brother Benjamin. They could have allowed this ruler of Egypt, Joseph, to take Benjamin, and they could return to their father and their families. But they had lived with the guilt of selling Joseph into slavery and saw the pain they had caused their father. They could not return to Jacob with Benjamin missing. This testing that they went through is a foreshadowing of what may happen in the near future when death will be seemingly everywhere. And his notes say, as Islam invades other countries, I really don't think it's going to be Islam, but anyway. Will we look out for ourselves, or will we help others? We will feel like Judah and his brothers did, that Yahweh will seem to be hiding his face. This will be the time of our ultimate testing to show what is really inside us. Judah said, I will have sinned to my father for all time. This event is a foreshadowing of the final judgment. Judah's sin toward his brother Jacob is likened to the final judgment that cannot be changed since his father would have died. Our Father, the Father Yahweh, will seem to be hiding his face as Joseph was doing, to test us.
We know how much we like being tested, too.
I don't mind the outcome of the testing. Or even if you're halfway obedient.
Go ahead, Joe. Let us have it.
All right, so I guess my thoughts now go to, that while Joseph, he had to have at some point in his life thought what it would be like to return to his family. Maybe when he was in Potiphar's house, he's thinking, maybe I could escape and return there, and I can go back into the land where of his nativity. There's always that calling to go back home, that go back home feeling that anybody has when they're away from home. Anyway, so homesickness, I guess. He's probably homesick after a few years in Egypt, and I think maybe that this is the circumstance for God to have him incarcerated. Maybe it was just this to keep him there. He needed him to be in this position when his plan was fulfilled. So it took that burden away from him of constantly thinking, how do I get back home? When he's in prison, he doesn't have this thought anymore. So yeah, he's like, well, I'm stuck here, aren't I? Might as well make the best of it until I can. And I mean, there's no talk of him ever being freed from prison. He just by chance by God's grace, he's actually released from prison. I mean, he could have stayed there for the rest of his life for all we know. And in that situation, his only comfort is the position or the relationship that he has with the Father. That's probably the closest relation. He probably spends a lot of time meditating. I don't know. I've never been to prison, but I'm sure for prison people that are in prison, they spend a lot of time reflecting on their lives, looking at their future, praying, meditating. Whatever you do when you're in prison, I'm sure that he did a lot of that. And he had 13 years from the time that he left Canaan to the time that he was redeemed. I don't know if that number is significant to the Parsha, but it was 13 years from the time he was 17 to the time he was 30. So, yeah, that's a significant number. How related, I mean, I let you people that do the gematria to figure that one out. The 11, the 13, and then the sister, or the 12 and the sister, that's 13. So Joseph's sons, yeah, that would be good too. You could, the half tribes. So I think, when you have have a lot of time on your hands, you tend to, listen to the prompting of the Holy Spirit more than, I think.
With you saying that, with our faith comes an expectancy, a feeling of expectancy, and evidently, how many times have we ever awakened and have had a dream, and gosh, that thing seemed real? I mean, it seemed real, man. I mean, it seemed like way real from just regular dreaming, and that's enough there to cement or add to an individual's faith in itself. And then him seeing what had happened to him, but then he ends up in Potiphar's house. That's probably something that carried a little cloud. If he went somewhere to do a little business for Potiphar's house and somebody got wordy and he says, well, I'm one of Potiphar's servants, they would think I've said too much already. I better be quiet and just see what he needs. You know, but there's an expectancy in our faith. And then, and my point is, it's what sustained him, his belief and his faith. And then he goes to prison, for being accused. And then it seems like his out has come. He has interpreted these guys' dreams. And it has come to pass. One's dead and one's gone. But remember me. Remember me. And he's probably thinking, there's that flesh on him. Man, this is my way out. It is your way out, but not the way you think. And it's not going to happen right this minute. But later on down the road, the servant, the cupbearer, he says, you know what? This dream you say you had, there was this guy, when you had me incarcerated for a little while, that's where. But my point is the expectancy that is in our faith that keeps us hanging on, and that we really do believe it. We really do. And that's what we're made of. The world sees us as we get our payoff when we die. And they say, that's crazy. Why good is that? But they don't get it. They don't get it. But, and that's admirable on his part, because he had to hang in there a long time. It would have worn me out. It would have worn me out. It would have. You know what? Unless God was still giving me a little more breadcrumbs here and there. Just when I was almost to the point where I'm going, he'd give me a little more breadcrumbs. And that's what I believe God did all along the way, to giving him favor when he was in the jail. They probably opened his cell, took him out of his shackles and let him move about, the jailers, so they could just kick back and take a nap and all, trusting him, which sustained him. One of the things that helped him to feel reassured, I have favor. And because I would have never had them dreams back then where people were bowing down to me, which means I have favor. So I just, blah, blah, blah. Just my 2 bits on that. Look at this good-looking young buck up here. Are you lost?
No, I'm just waiting on you.
Go ahead. I'm
You
done.
finished?
I'm go ahead, Pastor.
All
Forgive me.
You got to be careful handing him the mic, Joe. Yeah. So one of the overall patterns you continue to see, it starts with Abraham, where he's moving about and he ends up in Egypt and he ends up here and there, and now you end up with Jacob, and he just I don't know the time frame, but coming out of Laban's house back into the land, and now he's going back into Egypt, or he's going into Egypt. And so you just see this pattern of how God is developing the nation of Israel, and that's how he does it. And I just find it interesting that here we are again, coming out of the land and going into Egypt. And, and then later on, of course, they go into Babylon, and it's just a constant back and forth, and it's just, in some cases, it's the choices they make, but in other cases, it's what the Father is doing in the development of the nation of Israel. Because when they come out slaves, but they're free, but in their minds they're still slaves. You got to take them through that. Just like when Abraham came out of Egypt, he brought Hagar with him. And so now we know the whole story, how that ends up becoming a kind of a thorn in Abraham's side, and really in the nation of Israel's side.
And in our side.
So it seems like every time they come out of the land, just like when they came out of Babylon, they bring something with them.
Right.
That they have to somehow get rid of. And a lot of times they don't. But yeah. And how about our lives? When God takes us through something, takes us out into the wilderness or takes us into Egypt, and when he comes to bring us out of that, what are we carrying with us that we need to get rid of? Anyway, that's my one
good.
shekel.
No, that's
thing.
good
I don't
stuff.
have the wind
That's
you
worthwhile.
got.
I think you had a couple seconds there. Now, Alex, come take his thunder away.
I don't know. I really relate to Joseph when he finally, tells his brothers, like, it's me. Don't worry. Don't be mad about this whole situation because it was God's plan. And I think in that moment, like, he passed his last test, I think, right? So he could have easily just said, you know what, forget you guys. This is me, and now to jail with all of you. But he forgave them, in a sense, blessed them abundantly, and then he realized his purpose, I think, too, in the same thing. Like this all going all the way back to the dream, the whole purpose of this is so that he could help preserve life. And so of course he's going to be excited. Don't be mad about this. This is a wonderful thing that the Father is doing in our lives. And I think about how the Father kind of does that in my life.
In all our lives.
In all of our lives. And I don't know, I might be jumping ahead a little bit, but I had in my notebook here from Parsha past or whatever, but Joseph provided physical bread for people, and Yeshua is our spiritual bread. So I always love that one. And I know Joel had mentioned 13. I don't know what 13 stands for, but by the time he leaves by the time he leaves Egypt, it's 17 years, which is victory. So through all of this, there is victory, and we just have to lay it at the Father's feet, and he's going to win the battle. So that's all I have.
Well, with you saying that, though, something that comes to my mind, and maybe some of you can relate to this. When we we foresee, we have in our hope that we look to foresee an opportunity to how we will conduct ourselves if something was to come about. Something that has a magnitude of something that probably most definitely happened in our past. And I think more than once he stood in front of a mirror as if they were all there already. And this is how I will react, Father. This is what I would want to say. This is the good I would want to come from on. And he did that more than once. And his opportunity came. They showed up. They walked right back into his life, And when his eyes first fell on them, his heart probably leaped and said, I believe I know how this is going to pan out. Because I've rehearsed it so many times. So many times. Yeah. But that's just wanted to say that. You're next.
Okay. So when you look also in Galatians, I mentioned a verse from there a moment ago, and the one born of the flesh and the one born of the spirit. It also says there, and in Romans, some things about the spirit of adoption. And in Romans, there's, that by the spirit of adoption, we cry out, Abba, Father. But you see, in Pharaoh wanting to be considered Joseph's son and all that, throughout, Joseph says to Benjamin, God be gracious to you, my son. Jacob blesses Joseph's two sons as though they were now being conferred the right of the firstborn and so forth. There's so many ways that obvious spiritual allusions are there. But on another note, they virtually had said at the time that the steward chased the brothers for the missing silver goblet. Then when they came to distress and realized they might as well stay in Egypt now and all that, they kind of called it karma. That this was real justice, and it's interesting to look at that. It wouldn't have been specifically justice for Joseph to enslave them all, sell them, or something else, but for them to experience distress in their soul. And, at that point, they'd be able to relate to someone who had experienced that distress of soul, such as Joseph. It's interesting to think, that older siblings or people that, have status and live in wealthy countries sometimes couldn't fathom the experience of someone in, name a third world country, North Korea, I don't know, but
Pakistan.
suddenly they're able to be in that point of need that maybe God is their only hope right now. Like Joseph, while being, I think, put in shackles and whisked off with the caravan of Ishmaelites, he was able then to, I think, to refocus on God. And, so it's interesting because the transformation needed to take place in his life. And often it's when we're making a real prayer and not, parroting or reading a prayer, but when I need something from God in this moment, and I speak to Him as my Father, that then those blessings can flow like I'll use, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Someone who's in a lowly place, like a marsh is a lowly place, it draws water to itself, just as the person who sees his need of God and his need of transformation is able to draw from the kingdom of heaven into his spirit.
Mm-hmm. Oh, gosh, I got something coming to my mind. I hope I don't lose it. Wait a second. God. Maybe it'll come back. Yes?
I want to step back to when Danielle was talking about Joseph and his sharing of his dream and all. I just thought of it mostly as immaturity on his part, is that we learn their wisdom and discernment needs to be applied to our words, that just because the Lord shares something with us doesn't mean that we need to run out and share that word with everybody, that the words, when they are well timed and spoken, they are Obama Gilead often, but an ill-timed word can do the exact opposite. And so basically, I think Joseph just operated out of immaturity and not knowing that this was information for him, but it wasn't really something for him to go out and share with his family. The Lord was showing him where He was taking him. So.
It came back to me. It came back to me. Can you hold them all?
Just when I get up here, now all of a sudden.
No, I waited.
Now you got
I waited a
book
moment. I
to
did.
talk about.
A lot of this goes back to, the point I'm trying to make is waiting on the Lord. Because no matter how much faith we got in all this, that, and the other, I think one of the axioms of our faith is operating in faith is waiting. By faith, I'm waiting on the Lord. And having done all that we can do, then wait. Because when you wait, His timing is perfect. Like I said earlier today, some days what seems to us that He's 4 days late, but He's right on time. He's right on time, But that was the point. Let that be one of a big nugget there, to wait on the Lord, because His timing is perfect. He might want us to do. He might be moving us, and then He's waiting a minute. Go, stop. Just that quick at times. Days are probably gonna come where we're really gonna have to operate in the Spirit, but. After we've done all, remember to wait on the Lord, which He had to do. He had no choice. Probably because he was young and restless and he got excited easy, God had to lock him up to keep him in one place still. Because he's going to run around going blah, 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 and they're going to think he's crazy. Well, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. Yes?
Are you finished?
No, I'm waiting for you to talk. I'm going to start
want you to
right
lose
up
a
again.
And I feel the same way when he was young, because part of what's believed is he was being groomed to run his father's household, once his father passed
That's
away and
a
everything.
thought.
And so that's why he had the
Robe
coat of many colors, and he
mhm.
kind of walked around and told on his brothers and stuff like that, and they didn't like him. And so, being young and being put into, or even being groomed for a position, there might have been some arrogance and pride that came about. And then when he had the dream, he might have just been excited, to share it with everybody, not realizing that people were going to be insulted.
Well, that was his only audience.
Right. And so, and so by the time you fast forward to Egypt, after he's already been through all this, God has brought him through a lot to grow him and to humble him. When he sees his brothers and they're bowing before him, he's probably like no more like stand up, in his heart. It's not a sense of pride for him, but it's more compassion and humility, and it almost breaks his heart that his brothers are kneeling before him, if that makes sense.
That's
Because he's in a way he's kind of making them, they don't know who he is, so in a way he's kind of toying with them, but he's also trying to find out information because he doesn't trust them, because they try to kill him, okay, and they think he's dead, so he doesn't trust them, so he's trying to get information. Is his dad still alive? Where's his brother Benjamin? Did they do the same thing to his brother? So he's trying to get information out of him, I think, and then, but at the same time, I think his heart is just is troubled that they're bowing before him. If that makes sense. Anyway.
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, Joe, I saw you block her.
No,
I saw you
I'm
block her
going.
right there.
I'm definitely
What's
going.
that?
I've been waiting forever.
I keep forgetting she's over there. She's like that sniper behind the bush.
I did. Real quick, Robert Bobbert said that he does tend to lean towards Julie's comments about Joseph's dreams and his sharing. He also said just now, if he was being groomed, that would definitely be a point of contention with his family. So I agree a bit with Chris. You guys got points from Bob. But I can't help but to think about Joseph, where he started, where he ended up being. God specifically had shown him what was going to happen. And yeah, I mean, a 17-year-old mind, I'd probably have a big head about it too. But I feel like this is encouraging because we all go through seasons. We all have trials that we have to overcome. But God still already has the end game for you. I feel that is very encouraging to know that, I might be going through a season, a really hard, dark time in my life. I'm in a pit, and not really feeling like I'm going to be able to get out. But none of that really matters because God's going to take you where he needs you to go. Sometimes there's some detours that we have to take, tests that we have to overcome. But I think that the faithfulness to still lean and understand that God is going to get us out of that mess is what truly inspires us to pass our tests. So I'm just very encouraged by Joseph and all the things that he's had to go through. I've never personally been in a pit, and I've never been arrested for anything. So if he can go through something like that, I for sure can, overcome my crazy life in Walterboro.
It's the armpit? Oh, the front. But it's really the armpit. I like it. It's warm and fuzzy.
Yeah, that was funny. I like that.
Okay, I guess my thoughts go to, it seems like, and especially with Joseph, that, he thrives on being like pulling his people out of the people that are in isolation. I mean, it's like whenever he wanted to put Moses into action, he took Moses out of Egypt to get him isolated by himself. So he spent all that time in Midian, with the Midianites. So he was sort of isolated there by himself. And you had King David, who was a shepherd, so he was isolated by himself. So I think if you ever feel isolated and alone, you're probably actually being groomed for an operation that God has for you to accomplish for his glory. Perhaps that.
Also, the number 13, I had to look it up. The number 13 means the outworking of pride. It could also mean rebellion or lawlessness.
Chris said something, I don't remember exactly what it is now, but also in agreeing with what Julie said, the difference in Joseph and his response to his excitement, his younger self versus his older, if you will, self. That he, when he was younger and he was excited, having the dream and wanting to share it, yada, yada, and he didn't hold his tongue. And with time and experience in his situations, he learned how to respond more appropriate to the way in which the Father wants us to respond. He wants us to have control over ourselves, where he didn't have that self-control when he was younger, and in his experiences, he did mature. And so he was able to, that's a fruit of the Spirit, that we see in Galatians.
I did a study years ago about the number 13, and it's for, it's a lot of people think it's an unlucky number. When you go to high rises, they skip the number 13. But for, right? But for God's people, 13 is a time of change where we come out of something and go into something good. So what, just like we talk about, like the coming of the Lord is the great and terrible day, because it's going to be depending on what side of the fence you're on. For us, it's good. So the battle with the 5 kings back for where they took Lot, that was for in 12 years they served, in the 13th year they rebelled, and then they fought. Anyway, I often have wondered why, once Joseph is out of prison, why does he not send somebody back to see his dad or get his dad or something? Why does it, I guess he has to wait to see where the brothers are and things, but it just seems weird that he never goes back.
You got a thought, Louise? Yeah. I just think that he was guided by the Lord. Just like, we asked the Lord this day, which way do you want me to go? How should I do this? Should I not? Whatever. And I believe he was God. He had plenty of time to pray.
Anybody? I just, I'm going to move along here for a minute there, since everybody's done said this, that, and the other. Dadgummit, don't tell me I lost my question. Oh, yeah. Come on, I'm waiting. I said, yeah, oh yeah, come on, don't be scared. Don't be scared. You did. Well, it's easy to do, ain't it? Making me feel good. Go ahead, you got it.
Trying to find the thought. I just had it. Yeah.
You left it there. You left it there. Come on, you got it. You got it, Chris.
Yeah, you're right. It did. I think part of it too was maybe even the Father told him to not worry about that he was going to bring them to him. because like you said, he had plenty of time. And so he kind of, and the father obviously didn't want him to go to them because he had plans for him in Egypt. And he probably said, hey, I'm using you to prepare a way and for them, And so he always had that faith that and hope that he would one day see him again. But at the same time, and the same in our lives too, is to not jump ahead of the Father and his plans, because had he gone to look for him, it would have kind of shipwrecked what the father was doing as far as trying to get them out of Canaan, I guess.
All right, I like that too. I like that. Hold it. I've always wanted to tell a pastor, hold it. Hold it. But I like that because it would be easy for him to think in his fantasy or wildest dream that if it's ever I'm going to get to see any, if not all of my family again, it will be during this famine, unless they drop off the planet somewhere, because the whole land is like shot, and they're going to show up here sooner or later, and that's where he could rest if he feel like the Spirit is telling him, don't worry about this right now. Don't worry about it. Yes, Pastor?
Oh, I get to go?
Go ahead.
So just to answer Mom, makes sense to me. It doesn't have to make sense to anybody else.
You better not steal my thunder either. I'll let you go.
So, I mean, he came out of prison for a purpose, right? And that was to interpret a dream. And he gives the interpretation of said dream, and it is famine. And famine's not only going to strike Egypt, right? It's going to be everywhere else. So in his mind, he's probably thinking, oh, he's already going to be the head over all of this stuff. He's going to be gathering grain for the next 7 years. And then, he knows that people are going to be going to the one place that's going to have that resource, to be able to supplement their family. So it could potentially be that he knew that his family was going to come. It was just a matter of time and waiting. There's lots of things coming, together that need to be happening. Planning needs to, be brought forth for this thing. But I've also had some of the, same questions. If this family had sheep and stuff like that, I mean, why wouldn't have Joseph, sent somebody and said, hey, go tell this family, that this is what's happened. Of course, it was 13 years later. So
you're saying he was too busy working?
I'm saying that he was doing what God had set him to do, and it was just a matter of time. He knew his family would have to be there.
I think there's a few inclinations at this time that he had that gave him the weight and the patience and all this. Normally when somebody interprets a dream, I'm talking about this particular season that's this short, this dreaming stuff that these people are having, and he's interpreting and then this, that, and the other. He hears the dream, and so he interprets it. But this one's different. He's told, tell me the dream. Isn't he? That's a big deal. But he is so confident because the Lord has showed him this ain't nothing. We can do this. This ain't nothing. And starting that being a line in the sand for this season and this time and the way things are starting to mature and change, I'm going to tell this guy what he dreamed. And then I'm going to tell him what it means, because this is going to make this guy sit back and go, that's the man. That's the man. All righty, go ahead.
All right. No, not at all. I will say this. To me, reading previously, or actually after the fact when he does,
Something ain't right. Does it
it's
work?
obvious that, to me personally, that he wasn't ready. Had nothing to do with God telling him to hold up or anything else. I will go as far to say that God caused this entire situation to happen to bring about the restitution between him and his brothers and his father and everything else. That Joseph not only interprets a dream, but now Joseph has 7 years of plenty. Joseph still wasn't ready to face what happened to him back when he was a teenager. And so God creates this event to take place. For what purpose? For the purpose of which we see the rest of it play out. Because see, when you read further into it, God already had a plan. He was going to bring the children of Israel into the land of Mitzrayim, and that they at some point would be delivered out of Mitzrayim and go to the promised land. This is all a part of the Father's plan. I mean, of course, we get to see the whole story played out. The simple thing for me is that Joseph, even 7 years after the fact that he got out of jail, was not ready to face. There were still a lot of emotions tied up in what happened between him and his brothers. We see that when his brothers do show up, the emotion is overtaking him at that moment, that he has to leave them and go somewhere else. And so at that point, you still see him dealing with things, because now he's going to pretend I'm going to have an interpreter. I look Egyptian, I sound Egyptian, I understand what you're saying, but you don't know I know what you're saying. And I'm going to play some games with you where I'm going to put something in a sack and not in a sack, give your money back, all this stuff, where to me that was his way of processing through the hurt by giving them their money back and everything else. It was like that was a processing that was taking place. And then when we read the final story where he reveals himself, his emotions are so loud that the entire house of Pharaoh hears it. This guy, at this point, there's a healing taking place in Joseph's life. Has he been a man of God all along? Absolutely. Has he done everything that God's put him through? Absolutely. And sometimes the most incredible hurdle that any of us have to get through is the emotional connection that we have with family. That could be some of the hardest hurts you'll ever have in your life is with family. And we see that God is now delivering that, and that healing is taking place. And not only do we see that, but we see the favor that Pharaoh's given him, knowing that that's why he told his brothers, hey, tell them you're shepherds, because to the Mitzrayim's, they're kind of over here, but guess what? You get the best part of Goshen. You get to eat your cattle. Everyone gets to live in the nicest part of the land. Then we get all the way to his dad, which is, anybody know why Pharaoh's asking him how old he is? Anybody? Because in the Egyptian times, if you lived to be 120, that was a blessing. So Jacob answers him and goes, he goes, I'm 130 years old. There's a reason why Pharaoh asked how old he was, and Jacob just kind of brag a little bit and go, well, I'm 130. Because in Egyptian times, to live to be 120 was like this blessing from the gods. And so then, of course, and Jacob turns around and gets to bless Pharaoh and all of this.
Right.
But to go back to the story, I know I'm going on another trail, is that the reason why he didn't go look, in my opinion, he wasn't ready. And God had a task for him. This is a big job. You're the next in command. You are the man other than Pharaoh. So you've got a big job ahead of you, because you're going to be feeding a lot of people and storing and doing everything else that you're going to be doing for the next 7 years. But to me personally, he just wasn't ready for that. He's not going to send any spies back and go, hey, by the way, is Pop still alive? Is there any other brothers? Yada, yada. These are all the questions that he asked his brothers when they show up, while he's pretending to be somebody else. And they're probably scratching their head letter going, why is he asking us about a younger brother for? What does he care, And why is he putting us through all of this, for nothing? But anyway, I think he just wasn't ready. But in God's timing, he brought a healing to Joseph that Joseph really, and then the brothers needed it, because the brothers, you can tell from their statements that they were reeling from what they did too. Was he not in the pit screaming for his life? Did I not tell you guys not to do this to him and all this stuff? So now they're putting, not only is he released, but now they're released from that bondage that they were under all those years. So anyway, that's my 4 shekels.
I'd like to add something to that, though.
Sure.
I like where you went with that, too. I really do. And something that didn't dawn on me is how big the time frame was. This time frame was at least 7 years.
And probably a little bit more than that
because
before. Yeah.
There was 7 years of plenty. But what brought the statement that comes to my mind that you caused me to have is,
yeah.
in our own strength, we're never ready.
Nope.
We're never ready.
Nope.
We're trying what we're doing in our own strength to build ourselves up to think we might be ready if the situation evolves a certain way, which don't happen. But in the same time, when we're on the spot,
Yep.
we're saying under our breath, Father, help me with this right now, because I just don't know how this is going to go, and I need you. I need you here right now. Right now. And that's when the glory, God's glory, is given where it goes. To God.
Yep.
To God. You know. And then back again, it's the timing. Because if we try to do things in our strength, sometimes premature is a bad thing. Because we blah, blah, blah too soon. Not yet. Not yet. And not that neither. Don't blah, blah, blah that. You know, which is why we should wait. You know, the last time I really did a blah, blah, blah in my own strength, I went to jail for my first time. So I said, this don't work. Don't do that no more. I mean, it wasn't nothing that I did. It wasn't nothing I did. It was something I said that put me in jail. You know. Okay, Chris.
No, I have to agree with Joe with what he was saying too. I think that was a big part of it. And kind of going to what I was coming up here to say was, he was second in command pretty much of Egypt. He could have gotten a portion of the army and an entourage to go out there, you know, confront his brothers or whatever he wanted to do. Tell his daddy, I'm still alive. Grab his brother Benjamin and whatever. He could have done something. He had the authority and power. And then kind of a contrast to that is you go to the book of Nehemiah. And he's not second in control, but he has the ear of the king. I can't remember what the Babylon called themselves, but the king, enough to the point where the king gives him an entourage and a military force. Let's say a group of special forces guys to go out there
and
whatever he
supplies,
wanted,
everything
to go and build a wall. Now, and it goes to I think that's where we got to be careful too. Is the provisions and blessings. And what God wants us to do, where we're at, and what He wants us to do. Because Joseph's job was to stay in Egypt, and to have the provision there for his family to come, and where Nehemiah's position and provision was to go into the land and build that wall. And so, anyway.
Thank you, Chris.
Good. All right, so my thoughts go to you know, the amount of infrastructure that had to be developed, you know, for the storage of all this grain, and that's still there today, although they deny that it was ever used for grain storage. But there's all these pits in the ground in Egypt, are clearly for, let's say, that had the appearance of being silos. And certainly they had to have a place to store, you know, grain that would last for 7 years for the entire, you know, I guess that's a Fertile Crescent, they call that area. And yeah, it was they had to store a lot of material. They in fact have a reservoir on the backside of Cairo that's today it's still called the Sea of Joseph, because that was apparently a part of his genius was to, you know, the only time that they have water in Egypt, or at least at that time, was when the Nile was in flood, which, you know, the Nile actually flows. It's the longest river in the world. It actually flows from the south to the north, which is pretty unusual. I mean, most rivers go from the north to the south. But, you know, it's the only time the floods bring in all this soil from the mountains, and it brings in a lot of healthy debris, the detritus and all of the stuff that comes off the mountains. Gives a lot of fertilizer to the delta, the Nile Delta region, and you know, it's always been part of the ecosystem in Egypt, and now they've got the Aswan High Dam that dams up the Nile River, and it's actually a bone of contention between, you know, Egypt and Ethiopia. You know, was the fact that that water that's dammed up by that, or just by that dam, is also supplies water for Ethiopia. So there's actually a lot of war talk, war drums beating over that dam that's there now. Not only that, it doesn't allow the silt to filter down into the delta. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of ecological damage because of the Aswan High Dam. It affects very, very heavily the area of Egypt. So, yeah, that river is pretty important, and the infrastructure that Joseph had to install to contain all this grain was pretty. It was a big operation. It's not just a matter of throwing some stuff into a sack and putting it on the side back, in the basement or something like that. They had to have a lot of grain.
Okay, so I'm keeping up with Facebook and some of the chat going on, and we're a little bit behind on some of the chat. But first of all, Bob commented about why Joseph maybe did not go looking for his dad and so on. And he said Joseph kind of had a bit on his plate for sure after getting out of prison. Lots of things accelerating very quickly for sure. Then he commented, an interesting question is that how Joseph viewed his life. Remember, we are all well down the road with our understanding of God. Was God involved in Joseph's location? Yes. And then for some reason, Facebook cuts off the rest of his comment. So, Bobby, you'll have to retype in the rest of that comment. Teresa Oliver has commented, when you have a toxic family or family member, sometimes a door slam, cutting off contact, is the best route to take. Joseph's brothers were certainly toxic. Then she commented, even when you door slam the toxic one or ones, you still wish and pray for things to reconcile somehow. And I was thinking, actually, Dean had commented about when he was brought up to about Pharaoh's dream, and Pharaoh said, you have to tell me the dream and then interpret it. I think Joseph was very humbled by that. And he didn't say, oh, yeah, I'm here to interpret, and tell you your dream. He said, my God will be the one who tells me the dream and interprets the dream. And after he does that, he goes on and advises him and says, I think you should, appoint someone. And I don't think that Joseph really thought that Pharaoh was going to go, yeah, appoint you. I think it was very humbling to him that Pharaoh heard him and yet said, you're the man for the job. So I think by this time we see that Joseph has become a pretty humble person.
Yep. We need intermission.
I don't need a microphone.
Don't break it now. Break an amble with a loaf of bread. One second. We want to hear what you're saying, yeah.
People online want to hear what you're saying. He says we don't like dead airspace. Bad radio.
Bob says that Heather says hi.
Hi, Heather. Hey. Yay.
Alright, should be solid.
Since Nehemiah was mentioned, that does have a correlation to the morning topic. It says, for the Israelites of the sons of Levi shall bring the offerings of grain, new wine, and oil to the storerooms where the vessels of the sanctuary are, and the priests that minister, and the gatekeepers and singers. We will not forsake nor neglect the house of our God. We were discussing Joseph and all, and I thought there's a parallel to Jesus' life. The exaltation on what we celebrate on Palm Sunday. He's descending from the Mount of Olives, and the multitude of disciples praises God and for all the miracles that they'd witnessed. And they said, blessed be the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest. When they said, Hosanna. That's Psalm 67 or something like that. A contraction meaning "Save us, O Lord, let the King hear us when we call." But anyway, so they said peace in heaven and glory in the highest. And it's interesting that Jesus, the praiseworthiness of Jesus' life redounded to the honor of God, and also that Jacob was able to glory in the blessings that God had conferred on Joseph, and that faithfulness had brought him.
So the rest of Bob's comment was where it got cut off. It says, was Joseph aware he was in God's will? Not so sure. So.
Well, that's interestingly said. All righty. Anybody else, or do we want to move along another line? Oh, Danielle. Speak unto us the wisdom that the Lord has impeded unto you.
Well, I don't know about that, but look, we're going to try. In Genesis 40, it's the end of 8. Well, we'll just say 8. When Joseph was talking to the cupbearer and the baker, and they woke up the next morning after having their dream, and he asks them why they look so worried. And they replied, "We both had dreams last night, but I'm just pointing out the response that he had to this, but there is no one here to tell us what they mean." And then Joseph says, "Interpreting dreams is God's business. Tell me what you saw. Tell me what you saw." They go through, they tell him his dream, and he says, I know what the dream means. So then in 18, he tells the baker, I'll tell, when the baker goes through his dream, and then Joseph says in 18, he says, I'll tell you what it means. And then 2 years later, when he is brought out of prison to interpret Pharaoh's dream in 41:16, he says, "It is beyond my power to do this," Joseph replied, "but God will tell you what it means and will set you at ease." So there's a difference in his response to who's interpreting the dream.
God and God alone.
I think the miracle is not, so much in his interpretation of the dream. I mean, I've had dreams interpreted, and I'm like, maybe that's what it means. Maybe that's not what it means. But the real miracle is that Pharaoh actually was in full agreement with what Joseph was saying. He agreed with him to the point where he actually laid out the work that needed to be done to make this come to pass. I mean, this is something that he's like, I don't, he could have easily said, I ain't buying none of this stuff. You're a Jew, and you need to get on out of here. But it wasn't. I mean, the miracle is the work that God did on Pharaoh himself. Pharaoh took it to heart, believed what Joseph had to say. And then he went further, and he says, I don't know anybody in this country, and I mean a country with a lot of arrogant people. I mean, Potiphar and all the rest of them. I don't know anybody who could manage this project better than you. Who has I think that was the miracle more so than the interpretation of, is God softening Pharaoh to the point where he actually agreed with Joseph.
I agree with you, Joe.
Okay.
Yeah, what he said.
Dean will be right back.
After these messages.
Pastor Joe.
Yeah, I want to make a comment on, the story of Joseph is one of those stories where we don't see the direct interaction with Joseph like you do with Jacob, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. through the Jacob's ladder. Chapter 46. It says, "And Israel set out," and we know that there's a spiritual connotation to the fact that when he's called Israel and when he's called Jacob. So this is a spiritual dream from Jehovah, a vision. It says, "And Israel set out with all that he had and came to Beersheba and slaughtered slaughterings to Elohim of his fathers, Isaac. And Elohim spoke to Israel in visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here I am." So we see this interaction with the father, with the other guys, but we really don't see it as much except for the very beginning of Joseph's life, when he has the dreams and he shares the dreams. And we know what happens from there. So I know that we're interjecting and we're trying to come up, but I believe that whatever we're not given in Scripture, but I believe that whatever walk Joseph had, the Father had a very unique way of speaking to him. And the fact that when we get to Pharaoh's dream, he says God will interpret it. We don't really understand other than, what's actually going on and how he is able to do this. The Bible doesn't give us, clear directions. Well, this is how, and the Lord said to Joseph. We don't see that. And for Joseph, though, the accumulation of his life up to the point of his brothers still, where he says to them, "And now I see the Father has shown me," basically, I'm paraphrasing, "that what you intended for evil, the Father intended for good." So through Joseph, there is a little bit of a different way that we see the Father communicating, because we never see in here where Joseph has a vision at night, or he has like with Jacob here, where he has visions throughout the night, and then Elohim's telling him, say, "Hey, man, don't worry about it. I am the El of your forefathers, and I am bringing you out to take you to this land." But however, the way that Joseph, the father spoke to Joseph was very unique in the story, that we don't get the same things here. But have no doubt in my personal mind that the Father was speaking to him in his own personal way. Now, like with all of us, we were on a journey, and there's a lot of things in my personal life that I didn't see the Father's hand until later. With the accumulation of things that happen, all of a sudden, you have your V8 moment where you're like, "Oh, now I see exactly what the Father is showing me." And I've also had the times where I'm sitting at my kitchen table, and God is just speaking to me the whole time and just telling me, "This is what you're going to do." Boom, 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 boom. So I can see it from both directions. So going back to that, I believe that whatever that uniqueness, that relationship he had, he was definitely, the hand of Yah was upon him. Whether or not we want to believe he was a cocky 17-year-old or whatever, I don't think he was. I think he was naive at that point. I don't think it's so much as being cocky. I think he just should have been keep your mouth shut and, learn, because your brothers don't like you anyway. And now you're going to come out there with a vision of them bowing to you and your father and your mother, all this stuff happening, right? But that, just all that to be said, is that it's not clear, very clear, but I do go back to what Foreman had talked about in Aleph Beta about the Father revealing these things through him through the accumulation of what was taking place in his life. So anyway, here.
Just kind of add a little bit to what you were saying, Joe. I think sometimes with the dreams that he was having and stuff, it was a matter of the timing. He didn't understand the timing of it. How many times in our life do we get excited and think, "Oh, it's going to happen. It's going to happen in an hour or a day," and all of a sudden it's like, no. And you're like, "Well, I guess I didn't hear him right." Then 10, 12 years later, God reminds you of what he showed you or told you 12 years ago. Back to Dean.
Right after station identification. Yeah. Here I am. I'm back. Good for another. This thing here wobbles. I mean, you need to tighten it. You need a set of wrenches to tighten up some stuff on home. No, well, they're broken. The wheels are broken. Anybody else? You got something?
Okay. It's not only in Japan that the dreams and their interpretation consist. That a major portion of the spirituality of the culture consists of these dreams and their interpretation. So I think it's worth our while to mine the gems from the parshas, these several parsha and or parshat. Anyway, Job, he says, let's see, Zophar was saying, for God speaks in this manner and in that, in a dream, in a vision, in the slumberings of man upon their beds, and so on. And it says to turn man from his iniquity and to conceal pride from man. So, anyway, I think we should value every way that God might be speaking to us and enlightening our minds. I think when our perspective and priorities are for the kingdom of heaven, to become more like our Master, Yeshua, then it is that God can reveal himself and his ways to us more.
It's an interesting thought here, which we all know. I'm just going to say it, though. You know, our measure is what God's speaking or showing us is lining up with what we think. It's what we think lining up with what he's saying or showing us. It's important because some of us are hard-headed. Some of us are hard-headed. You're going to have to sit out here next time because I forget you're over there.
I
do.
know.
Yeah.
We're getting an arm workout.
Here's Erica.
So Bob said, yes, unique story, unique interaction. Remember, we are way downstream. God's interaction with people was way different then, and it continues to evolve today. If there's anything extra to that, Bob, I'm sorry I didn't see it. It doesn't show up. But that's Bob's tidbit.
Bob needs to come out from behind the curtain and join us. Love you, brother. Well, I have one more thing. One thing I really wanted to say. It's on page. Did Chris turn my page? Let me see where I'm at. Chris turned my page. Not my page. Okay. No. Gosh. Wait a second. God, Chris. Wait a second. He turned a bunch of pages. He really messed me up. Okay. When they're doing the genealogy in chapter 46, and it comes down to verse 20, and it says, to Joseph were born in the land of Egypt from Asenath. How do you say that? Oh my goodness. Y'all excuse my reader while we wake her up.
What verse?
The daughter's name, verse 20 on chapter 46. What's her name?
I'm in 46, but what verse?
Verse 20.
20. It is Asenath?
Asenath.
Asenath?
It says, to Joseph was born in the land of Egypt from Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, chief. Now, look here. A while back, before they were chummy enough for him to give his daughter to him, you know, he was being accused of coming on to what's-her-face. You know, Potiphar's wife. Is
We
that?
talked about that last week. They're different people.
Oh, I wasn't here. He wouldn't let me come. Joe told him to stay home. I needed to stay home that day. So I missed out. So that's not. I've always thought that was the same.
The one that Joseph served in his house, Potiphar, the captain of the guard.
Right.
This is Potiphar, the priest of one of the gods.
Okay, fair.
Different people,
Okay,
different roles.
That's good. I stand corrected at her bad. All righty, Joey, where to?
Yes.
Gosh, I don't know if I can find that.
Ezekiel 37, 15 through 28. Gene, do you want me to read or do you want to read?
But I want to get there. I can't. I can't
Is it in
find
that book? Do you even
anything
have
outside
Ezekiel
the
in there?
Torah and the Tanakh. I don't know.
You don't
where it's
have
at.
it.
Wait, I'm close. I'm close though. I'm in the prophets.
It's the second to last page,
Hold
Dean.
on a second. I'm in the prophets. I'm okay, Ezekiel what?
37, verse
Okay.
15.
Wait a second.
Just tell us what page it's on.
Anybody?
He's still going.
Ezekiel 37,
Yes, sir.
1140. No, we got different. We're different.
Why don't we just go ahead and let Lauren read like prodigal?
And you'll
30.
be
What's the verse?
15.
I'm there. I'm there. What?
All right.
I'm there, man.
Okay. And the word of Jehovah came to me, saying, And you, son of man, take a stick for yourself and write on it, for Yehuda and the children of Israel, his companions. Then take another stick and write on it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel, his companions. Then bring them together for yourself into one stick, and they shall become one in your hand. And when the children of your people speak to you, saying, Don't you show us what you mean by these? Say to them, Thus says the Master Jehovah, See, I am taking the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel his companions, and I shall give them unto him with the stick of Yehuda, and make them one stick, and they shall be one in my hand. And the sticks on which you write shall be in your hand before their eyes, and speak to them. Thus said Master Jehovah, See, I am taking the children of Israel from among the nations, wherever they have gone, and shall gather them from all around, and I shall bring them into their land. And I shall make them one nation in the land, on the mountains of Israel. And one sovereign shall be sovereign over them all. And let them no longer be two nations, and let them no longer be divided into two reigns. And they shall no longer defile themselves with their idols, nor with their disgusting matters, nor with any of their transgressions. And I shall save them from all their dwelling places in which they had sinned, and I shall cleanse them. And they shall be my people, and I be their Elohim, while David, my servant, is sovereign over them. And they shall all have one shepherd, and walk in my right rulings, and guard my laws, and shall do them. And they shall dwell in the land that I have given to Jacob, my servant, where your fathers dwelt. And they shall dwell in it, they and their children's children, forever. And my servant David be their prince forever. And I shall make a covenant of peace with them, an everlasting covenant it is with them. And I shall place them and increase them, and shall place my set-apart place in their minds, or in their midst forever. And my dwelling place shall be over them, and I shall be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And the nations shall know that I, Yehovah, am setting Israel apart, when my set-apart place is in their midst forever.
That's right. What she said. Anybody got anything they'd like to? Ted? Go ahead, Ted. You were first. I saw you stand up first.
So this bit of Ezekiel 37 is about a future fulfillment of what we just read about. Because think about the very beginning of this parashah. Judah came close to Joseph, and in doing so, they became one family again after having been separated. In this case, for only, what did we say, 13, 9, 22 years, whatever. And, so now it's, like 2,700 years. What's 1,000 years or 100 years, right? So anyway, yeah.
Puff of smoke.
I gotta go here in a few minutes, go pick my son up from college, but I'm just gonna throw something out there, and my stick is very lightly in the ground, but I read this not too long ago, and I think that this is a layered prophecy of things that have happened and things are to happen. And the reason why I say that is because when Jehovah cut off the house of Israel and divorced them, and they said, and in here it says that we say, let's see what it say. In verse 11, so I'm going to go back up the whole chapter, okay? It says, and he said to me, Son of man, these bones are the house of Israel. See, they say our bones are dry, our expectancy has perished, and we ourselves have been cut off. This is the prophetic part of this, I believe, is speaking about when Jehovah has cut off his people and they are in the diaspora. And so when Yeshua had come, when Yeshua shows up on the scene, I believe that this part here of the expectancy in the dry bones, that when he does what he does on the cross, and then you have all the disciples going out and they're going all to the diaspora also and sharing what? The good news. And to me, the good news has always been you get to come back home. See, my expectancy has been lost. When he speaks to the Samaritan woman at the well, she's like, why do you speak to me knowing who I am? Because see, everybody else, we're a dog. Our expectancy has been cut off. We are dry. We can no longer be with Yehuda anymore because they recognize who we are. So to me, when Yeshua fulfilled what he did on the cross, it brought those two houses back as one in the spirit. But we still in the physical have to have that happen. When Brother Judah finally at some points looks at us, I believe as diaspora, as a house of Joseph, Ephraim, when they finally look at us in the physical and they understand us and go, you're my brother. And for whatever reason, the Father has kept them blinded to this point. But in the spiritual, the first part of Ezekiel has already been fulfilled. Because now then from there on, the gospel message is taken out. And not only can you come back home, but then Peter's shown in a vision in Acts 10 that not only is this for me and those who are out there, but now the Father's showing me that the Gentiles themselves can be saved and filled with the Holy Spirit. So this is me. Like I said, my stick's right here. It's not planted. But reading this again in my personal time, to me, this is a fulfillment has already taken place with Yeshua. That in the spiritual realm, these two have become one again. And that in the full fulfillment of this, because it says, I give you the shepherd. Well, the shepherd is, I know it says David, but that's Yeshua. I give you the one shepherd. And so in the fulfillment of that is when you read further down in there and it says, and I will, Jehovah, dwell in your midst forever. To me, it's going back to Revelation talk, is when the new Jerusalem comes down from heaven and that we all get to tabernacle with the Father forever. So that, to me, that's why when I look at Ezekiel, it's a layered prophecy that some things have taken place and happened, in my opinion, and other things are still waiting to happen. And so at some point when Brother Judah recognizes in the house of Joseph, see each other in the physical, all of a sudden there's this revelation of, I know who you are. I recognize who you are. Then I believe then we truly then become one with one another. So that's my 10 shekels.
I like that. Real quick, Bob said it will be very interesting to be part of the nations and seeing all of this. Seeing Israel united and being the light and servant priests to the nations. So much to witness.
I just want to thank Joe for sharing what he shared there, because I think he's spot on that in Yeshua's resurrection, in the heavenlies, the reconciliation has occurred. It's just waiting to be fulfilled on the earth and in the spiritual realm on the earth. In the heavenly realm, it's done.
So kind of like the phrase
it's
on
completely
earth as it
finished.
is in heaven.
Exactly. Yeah.
Good deal. Kenny, you back.
Well, as much as anything, I think that there's also going to be a reconciliation between the house of Israel, the house of Joseph, or Jacob, and the house of what's his brother's name? Esau. Yeah, Esau and Jacob. I think that's going to happen as well. I think there's going to be reconciliation between the house of Esau and the house of Jacob. If you see the fulfillment of the Abraham Accords, they've got all of these new relationships that the Middle Eastern countries are developing with Israel. I mean, you got Dubai, you got the Arab Emirates, UAE, you've got El Al flights going into Saudi Arabia now, you know, and I just think that's, you know, that I think that's all part of it, you know. I think that you know, God is going to be glorified when that happens, because in my world view of things, I think that it's the nations that cause all this friction in the Middle East. I don't think that it's done in the natural. I think it's done through external forces. I just can't get over this thing that rolls around in my head that says that, you know, once you get the Jewish brains and the Arab strength, the brawn, the power of the Arab people, you know, if you get those two to come together in peace, they're going to rule the world. I think that's why they inject this instability into the Middle East. Because if they ever get unified, the rest of the world is just going to turn into a dust bowl. I mean, they will literally run the world from right there in the Middle East. And I fully believe that. And I think that that's happening now. As more as you see the Camp David Accords and the relation, I mean, have you ever seen the videos they show of Dubai? That is that is an amazing city. I mean, they have got some incredible engineering and the electricity that it takes to drive that city.
They got the money for it, though.
Oh my God, I don't know where, but they get. I mean, it's not a bunch of sand dunes out there. It is a very, very high tech, high energy, global city.
Right.
You know, and I just think that we're missing something. We're missing a very big piece of the God puzzle
Well,
that's
the
going on.
control isn't in the right hands. I think people naturally want to live in peace. I'll use the phrase, blue collar workers are all the same. I don't care what country you go to. It's the white collar workers that create all the junk.
That's right. Like I
They
said,
have an agenda.
I think the instability is artificially installed. I mean, the people in Iran, they don't want to live in Iran. They want to live in Persia. They want to live in the country that is, you know, the heritage place. They don't want to live in some UN developed country and have UN developed rules imposed upon them, driven by, you know, some Ayatollah. Some, you know, they want to live in peace. You know, if you ever look back at the videos they had back when the Shah was in charge of Iran, you saw a lot of personal liberties in people, and people enjoyed that. Now you see everybody's got a face mask. And now where in the heck did they come up with the idea about face masks? You think that was something new? No, that's been going on for years.
Yeah, they do it every 100 years. About.
Well, they in China, when in Japan they wear masks because of all of the junk.
Yeah, I mean, I wear them too whenever I'm sanding sheetrock or I'm
Right.
cutting grass. I'm not going to wear it when I'm going to
Driving to the store or running down walking
yeah.
down the sidewalk.
in your car. But I just
People.
I just think that personal liberty, you know, is something that we need to be willing to die for if we have to.
I still don't have to wear a mask in my car. And I can smoke in my truck if I want to.
That's because you're so smoking hot.
Yeah, I am. I'm just fuming. Okay. What channel?
It's going to be that one. Yes. We're going to be in Luke 6.
I don't have a Luke. I'm out. I fold.
Mike
I don't
dropped
have a Luke.
from Dean.
Luke didn't show up today.
Luke 6, verses 12 through 16, so it's a short one. All right. Bye. Si, senor. It's Luke 6, verses 12 through 16. Luke 6, chapters 12 through 16. Not chapters, verses. Chapter 6, 12 through 16. Huh? All right. We ready? Okay. Let's do this. And in those days it came to be that he went out to the mountain to pray and was spending the night in prayer to Elohim. And when it became day, he called near his taught ones and chose from them 12, whom he also named emissaries. Simon, who he also named Kepha, and his brother Andrew, Yaakov and Yohanan and Philip and Bartholomew and Matthiahu and Toma and Yaakov and son of Alphi and Shimon, the one called the Ardent One, Yehuda the son of Jacob and Yehuda from Kirath, who also became the betrayer. And coming down with them, he stood on a level place with a crowd of his taught ones, and a great number of people from all Yehuda and Jerusalem, and from the coast country of Zor and Zion, who came to hear him, and to be healed of their diseases. And those who were troubled with unclean spirits, and they were healed. I went too far. That's okay.
Oh, no, you read too much. We're in trouble now.
Oh, so you're completely done. Okay. Any comments from the group? Please come on up. Crickets. Come on, you guys. It's got to be something, right?
How many names did you read?
Ooh, great question. How many names did I read?
12 brothers, 12 tribes, 12 disciples.
Very astute observation. Not prepared.
I can tell that all of y'all have spent all y'all's words that y'all brought today. Let me tell you what, I ain't got but a pocket full. I've got just enough to close with. If nobody has anything else to say, it's really been nice and all. And I just, you want to talk, Louise? I'll let you now. You want to say, you go to me? All the time, she does. She does. She does. She takes me back to my childhood. What that means is I use that wall I used to block parents with. But it's really been good today, y'all. A lot of good stuff has been said. I think we've dug into some stuff a little bit, and I want to thank the good Lord for the opportunity to be able to give Joy a break today. You know, I'm just going to expound a little on what he thinks and what he has said. Facilitating the Torah is exactly that. You don't have to teach nobody nothing. Just facilitate it. Let everybody. Y'all run it yourself. It ain't me. I'm just another pretty face here. That's all. You know. So just I've really enjoyed it though. It's felt good to be up here and everything. Thank you that you can read all those names. You are quite gifted. She is, and you have to come out from behind the bushes next week. You need, because I don't see you. You can wave your hand until the rings turn into buttermilk. I won't see you over there. You know. Yes, ma'am?
Okay, since I've been gone, like it seems like an eternity, my question is, with you bringing up about facilitating Torah, have we put up any kind of sign-up list, or does he have any volunteers of people willing to help
Y'all
facilitate?
go do it?
You're up for next,
Okay.
okay. Okay, and I didn't know if it's limited, you know, but anyway, well, maybe then what I need to do is get
wanna do
a
that?
sign-up list.
Well,
and
see, that's
we'll
2 weeks. I'm going to
ahead and
contact some
sign
people.
up.
I'm going to contact Danielle and tell her we're going to be doing that again if she would like to do it.
Okay.
Her, and matter of fact, contact Joanne too, because they did it together.
Mm.
You know, and there's other people. You know,
I
who
just
had
wasn't
did
sure
it.
if something had already
Yeah,
been put
it'd
into
really be
motion
good
because
because Joey, his shoulders aren't but so big. They really aren't, you know, and I'm sure it's a relief, especially for Vicky this week. You know, I think everything went real well. It don't go bad when the Lord is here and He's involved. It doesn't, no. And I appreciate everything everybody had to say and to put up with me. You know, I really do. I love all y'all for who you are and everything. And so with that, if we will bow our heads, Abba, Father, this is the day that you have made, and my Father, I believe we've rejoiced and we have been glad in it, dear Father. Dear Father, we hope anything that we have had to offer up to you, dear Father, has been a sweet odor to your nostrils, dear Father. Dear Father, we just praise you and thank you for everything that is good, for everything that is good comes from you. Dear Father, I love all my brothers and sisters, and there's no place else to be but with you and your Son, our Lord and Savior. Dear Father, we don't ever want to do nothing or go anywhere without you going before us, or at least just going with us, you know. Thank you, dear Father. See us into the evening and the rest of our weekend. Let it be restful, peaceful, and fruitful, dear Father. We just praise you. You know all our praise reports and all of our hearts, dear Father. You know all our prayers for those who are in need, dear Father, and you know just what they need in every way. And we just thank you that your faithfulness is sufficient, dear Father, to see us into, around, and through things, dear Father. In Yeshua's name I pray. Amen.